The ability for us to reflect on this incident, for the ability for us to learn from this incident could not happen without our partnership with Local 493. Your Local 493, your union officers too, are very much involved in the process of making sure that you hear a consistent message from your command officers, from the fire chief down, that we understand that this was a very tragic call for our members, but we have to learn from this call. The intent and the goal of this training session, this training video, is to make sure that this does not happen again. It is also our goal that we learn our lessons and we learn from this day through training, through our commitment to safety, to revisiting our perspective on how we size up buildings, on how we make our strategic decision-making process with every time we pull up on an emergency scene, is that we have to stay committed to our core values of protecting our members, of mitigating these emergencies, and then also too is that making sure that from the start of every shift and from the start of every incident that we run on is that every member goes home to their family safely and in one piece.
Fire Department, what's the address?
6024 North 47th Avenue.
Is that a house or an apartment?
A house.
And what is the emergency?
The next door house is on fire. Nobody lives there, but it's on fire.
Okay, so the vacant house on fire?
Yes.
Okay, do you see fire or just smoke?
Fire.
Okay, we got some help on the way. Where's the fire coming from?
It's from the house. I think an ambulance is just here.
Yeah, but where? The roof or where?
From the trees.
Okay, got some help on the way. Should be there in a couple minutes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
We were in quarters when this fire was dispatched. We came out, we got in the truck, got turned out. We were able to get on the rig, follow the rules of engagement, and began to respond. We were lucky enough that we happened to get all the green lights on the way here. We actually encountered engine 26 at the intersection of 43rd Avenue and Bethany. You could tell it was obvious working when we began to respond. You could see the smoke from a little bit of ways away. It was what you would describe kind of a typical Merivale plume. It was nothing too dark or any strange colors, but just enough to tell that you had a working fire. So we pulled up, we turned north here on 47th Avenue, and there was a plug across the street that we were going to hand jack, and so I had spoken to Joe. He said it was fine for him to hand jack that. So we began to pull up on scene here. As we approached, we had some hindrances to our view. We had these oleanders over here, and they blocked us from getting a view of the south side of the house, and also from kind of seeing what we had going on in the back. So we pulled up in front, and that was when I took my initial size up and snapshot of the house. Initially, what I saw was just a very typical Merivale configuration. We did have smoke pushing out of the front door. In fact, I actually thought that some of the smoke coming out, the way that it was coming out from under the eaves and maybe the way that these trees here were dissipating it, I kind of described it as lazy smoke. It wasn't really pushing out too fast or anything like that. It was just kind of a lazy smoke pushing out of the front door. So that was my initial snapshot of the house, decided it was an offensive fire.
Engine 15 is on scene of a medium-sized house with a working fire. Engine 15 handjacking the supply line, taking an attack line in for search and rescue and fire attack. Engine 15 will be 47th Avenue Command in the offensive strategy.
The ability for the initial company officer to size up this building, for him to be able to communicate his incident action plan to those responding units, for him to communicate appropriately over the radio, for him to understand that this was a very critical fire that he was going into, that is something that we have to emphasize too as well.
As I was giving my on-scene report, I had a Glendale unit approaching from the north, and I also had engine 26 pull up next to me. I got off 26. It actually brought us a supply line, which I was thankful for, because my engineer didn't have to leave and go set up and hand jack a line. Since they brought us a line, they were here, I assigned them to take a second hand line off of our truck and assist us with search and rescue and fire attack.
We ended up taking that plug right there, and I decided to take it immediately because of the smoke that I saw. It was a brown smoke, the fire is going real good, and figured it was hot, so I was going to land the line right now. And I told Albert at that after he made his initial assignment, and he came back to me and told us, Engine 26, to go ahead and take a second hand line off of his truck, assist him interior with search and rescue and fire attack.
Engine 26. Engine 26, go. Pull the second line off my truck. Go in and assist us with search and rescue and fire attack. Engine 26 going to take a second hand line, assist with rescue and fire.
I threw my bottle, I grabbed my TIC camera, and I came around the back, and that was when I encountered face-to-face ladder 26 there. As I came around the back, I did my second snapshot of the building just to see if anything had changed and reassess, trying to get another angle. And my second assessment was still the same as my first. This is an offensive firefight. The smoke conditions were the same, and we were still going to go inside and see if we could do a search and rescue on this house. I assigned ladder 26 to the roof face-to-face. I also assigned rescue 26 face-to-face to engine 26 that they were going to be assigned to them. And then I came around to the front yard over here.
So what I did when I first got on scene of this fire is I hopped off, I threw my bottle, and I pulled a cross lay. And what I did is I pulled that cross lay through this vacant lot over here to stretch out that hose line. And then I pulled it around here and hopped over this short wall in order to make entry. This part's important because you can kind of tell how hard it would be to manage a hose line around these three corners. There's a third corner around to go into this room this way. And this is something that the firefighter, or Luke saw when he was first on scene too, is that this would be an issue for us to manage a hose line in order to have good hose line management throughout this fire and to make an effect on the fire. Luke was already at the front door because we didn't have to take a plug on this one. And we actually did have a conversation when we first got to this front door, and we said, this one is going to be hot and we got to be careful on this one and take it slow because it might flash on us. So before we even made entry into this room here, we knew that we had to be careful. We knew that there was some caution that needed to be exercised as we were going in to fight this fire.
I was looking at the house as I approached, and I noticed that both of these front doors here, these front windows, excuse me, were boarded up with metal shutters, not typical boarded up windows, but actual metal shutters, like heavy security windows. I knelt down right here and I began to throw my bottle.
We came up on the corner here, and this gable end, we just felt like that wasn't a good place to put the ladder. It's just not a safe place to put it because of that slope on the gable. So then we attempted to come down on this side, see if we could find a place here. As we came by, we saw Albert kneeling on the ground, putting his mask on, and Luke and D-Block were just getting ready to go inside.
And as I was down there kneeling, putting my gloves on, Battalion 151 showed up on scene, and they cleared me, they took command, they confirmed my assignments, and then they assigned me interior.
Battalion 151 to command. Command, go ahead. I'm going to assume command. I'm going to make you interior. You got yourself engine 26, rescue 26, correct? That's affirmative. I got engine 15, engine 26, rescue 26. I'm going to face-to-face with ladder 26. They're going to the roof. They'll be roof sectors. Command copies. Battalion 151 to alarm. I'm going to assume 47th Avenue command.
While I was here, I took my third snapshot of the house, and I remember seeing one of my firefighters, Luke Moran, walk into the front door here.
It was lazy smoke, lazy black smoke coming out at this point. We get in here, we advance up a little bit, and I start pulling ceiling right here. It was really hard to pull ceiling. Just like in a hallway, I felt like I was hitting HVAC system or something, and but it turned out to be lath and plaster, and that's why it was so hard to pull.
So he tapped me on the bottle and said we got a little bit of fire above us. So I backed up to about where he was, and I started flowing a straight stream pattern up into the roof to knock that fire out that was above us.
I stood up, I had one glove on, and I walked here towards the front door with this glove on. At that time, Battalion 151, who is now command, cleared me once again, so I set my glove down, and they wanted a CAN report, and I informed that I'd get them one in just 1 second because I hadn't really had a whole lot of time to get in there yet, and that I would get them a CAN report in a second. And I noted right here at this area, high heat on my ungloved hand, more than I expected to encounter, but still nothing that was to an extreme that I didn't think we should go in here. But I just noted that.
Once we started flowing water into the attic and started making effect on the attic fire, it became hot enough to drive us both to our knees. At that point, we had contact with each other. My feet were touching him, and we were both on the ground about right here. At that point, I recognized that I was hearing the fire to my right. So I'm on my knees right here. I have the hose line. We had just flowed water into the attic, and I can feel the fire on the right side, and I can also hear the crackling of the fire on the right side. So at that point, I decided to maybe creep forward just a few feet to see if I can see the seat of the fire. I thought the best way to mitigate the situation would be to actually put water on the seat of the fire.
At that point, I stepped over into this walkway here, and I remember seeing, as I looked there, I saw Luke standing here in the doorway through there, and I could make out the shape of his helmet and his shoulders, but they were smoky, and I had a pretty good view of the bottom half of his body. This was boarded here. They've since reboarded it since we wrote it down, but I knocked on it and realized that this was boarded up, and that was a concern of mine.
At this point, I knew that I still had to manage this turn and get us some more hose. So I came back out this doorway here, grabbed more hose. I couldn't see anything. My mask had been completely sooted over. And so I had to actually kick around to find the hose line. I grabbed the hose line and I just started feeding hose around this corner here. I had one turn back here already. I had this turn to manage, and then I had this turn to manage as well. So I knew I was going to get stuck here, so I really wanted to get a lot of hose into this house.
Luke had felt the hose line kind of pulling forward, so he dropped back just these 5 or 6 feet to this doorway and started feeding hose into this room so that I wouldn't have a hard time moving this hose line forward. So Luke's at the door at this point, and I'm about in the middle of the room on my hands and knees. The whole time I was trying to change the conditions of this room. I knew that there was a heavy fire load, and I knew that the probability for a flashover was high. So I kept a straight stream going into the roof, trying to wait for water return, because I felt like at that point I would be converting some of that heat, and I was trying to make it more tenable for Luke and I to be in this room, and also I was trying to prevent a flashover.
At that time, I happened to look back at the front door, and what I saw really, really alarmed me. We had smoke initially, like I said, coming out of the front door like from this high. Luke's a tall guy, and so I was able to make him out when he was standing there. He was gone at this point. He had gone back inside with Derek. And I literally watched the smoke conditions here change, and the smoke went from here, it banked down to the floor extremely rapidly, and then pressurized, it pushed out at me. And I remember standing here watching that happen, and all of a sudden smoke just came out at me. And I was very alarmed. I had just finished the ISO class and watched the class on smoke reading, and I recognized those conditions immediately as something that was a precursor to a bad event.
At that time, my firefighter had extended the line and was bringing it in and was heading this direction and was going in that door. I wanted to redirect him to this door, which engine 15 had went in. So, because like I said, I saw the smoke, I knew it was going to be hot. I wanted my crew in behind him in case anything happened. So as I was walking over here, I could still see Engine 15's firefighter's butt sticking out the door, filling hose. So I kind of understood why my firefighter was going this direction.
It's flaking it out on the driveway. This bush was a lot bigger, so my first plan was to go in the front door, but I saw it all backed up, and once I came back here, I noticed this door was wide open with a little fire coming off the door jamb area, a lot of smoke. When I first came on, honestly, I didn't notice the steel roll-down window security covers. I just noticed not a lot of fire, heavy smoke, a lot of smoke from the backyard. So I pulled my line, came here, knocked down the fire that was on the door jamb. Went in, not very far, probably 3 or 4 feet, and it was pretty hot, so I got down on my knees. Started opening up the nozzle. Couldn't see anything but a glow kind of towards the west. Not sure what it was, but when I opened my nozzle, the glow persisted, didn't affect the fire at all. If I was hitting it all, I couldn't tell. I could just tell there's a lot of heat because my ears started getting a little warm.
So I went inside, I immediately wanted to go inside, and my plan was at that point to regroup with Luke and Derek, and I really just wanted to bring them back to this doorway. I wanted to get them out, and I wanted to kneel here and kind of stage until ladder 26 had ventilated, because when they ventilated, we could get the smoke relief, we get the heat relief, and then we could go in and put this fire out like we normally do. And that was my plan.
They had their hose line out here. There was another hose line along here. There was some trash and stuff over there in the corner. And tying all that together, plus the concrete on the ground, we didn't feel like that was a good place to put the ladder as well. It's not a good bed for the ladder. There's too much confusion. So then we went over to the south side of the building, hoping that we could find a place over there to put it.
So I broke this threshold, and I was surprised at how hot it was. It was so hot that as soon as I stepped over the doorway, it literally drove me to my knees right here in this entryway. And I remember hitting my knees and kind of shuffling to get the heat off me and thinking to myself, this fire is way hotter than I expected. It's too hot for us to be in here right now. And then I really just wanted to bring them back and get them to the doorway.
By the time I got here and Luke was back there, I felt my ears start to burn and my neck start to burn. At that point, I turned around, still having a straight stream opened up in the room, just trying to work that nozzle to try to prevent a flashover. I turned around and yelled for Luke. What I wanted to have happen is I wanted us to start to back out and regroup at the front door and possibly wait for ventilation to make it more tenable for us to then go back in offensively and fight the fire. Luke couldn't hear me because he was feeding me some hose. He was managing the hose line at the door. So I made the decision at that point to try to back up along the hose line that we came in on, thinking that he would be on the hose line a little further back from me, and I would be able to back up and run into him and then be able to communicate with him at that point and tell him it's time to at least get out the front door and regroup.
I had my TIC camera on me, and I did an initial pan. I lifted it up to see what I could see in this room, and I had a complete whiteout of my TIC camera. I couldn't make out anything whatsoever. It was just white on the whole screen. It was just something I had never seen on a TIC camera before, and that kind of confirmed how I was feeling in here.
So if the hose line was right here, I was trying to back up on the same hose line, still with the nozzle in my hand, but walking along the hose line that was laid on the ground, thinking that I would run into Luke and that I would be able to communicate with him at that point. So what ended up happening is I remembered coming in at a diagonal, and when I backed up at that diagonal, instead of backing up and making this sharp turn, I ended up backing up into this corner. At the time I was at this corner, I knew my fingertips were burned from backing up here, and I knew my ears were burned, and my neck was obviously burned. So when I backed up to here, it became a scary situation for me because I didn't remember being in the corner of the room, and I thought I should be right at the front door. So I backed up in this corner. I continued yelling for Luke. I'm probably in this position right here, and I'm flowing a straight stream up into the room to try to keep it from flashing over on us. At this point, I know that Luke's on the hose line. I know he wouldn't leave me in a fire, so I'm worried about him because I'm calling for him. I can't hear him, and he's not responding. So at this point, I make the decision that I'm gonna have to stay in this firefight until I locate Luke and that we're able to both get out together. Of course, I thought if at any point, if I would have shut down the nozzle or got out of the fire, I'm the only water source in this room, I thought he would for sure be dead because it would have flashed over without a straight stream being operated into this room.
Once I got some hose into this room, the conditions had changed. It was extremely hot. It pinned me down to the ground. So I got down on the hose line to go catch up with Derek. I was feeling along this wall here. I had the hose in my left hand here and started crawling down this way here to to go find Derek here. As I crawled down here, the hose started to loop out this way, so I assumed that Derek was going to be right here. I had a hold of this wall here. I started reaching out, telling Derek, hey man, I'm hot, trying to communicate to see if he was feeling the same things I was. I got no answer, so I again said, hey Derek, I am hot, and no answer, but I could hear him flowing water. I believe he backed up into this corner, but I didn't know that at the time. I thought he was out in this way. I was trying to keep in touch with this wall so I knew where I was. I crawled out this way, keeping my foot on this, trying to swipe for him, and couldn't find him. I started yelling to him, hey man, I think it's time to get out of here, and no answer. I started just yelling D-block to over and over and over again, trying to get some communication going again, trying to figure out where he was.
So I'm here, I'm screaming for Luke, I'm calling for him. I start to feel my shoulders and side burn, so I would turn and I would start to burn on this side. So I dropped down to both my hands and knees, and that's when I felt my whole stomach burn. I'm still attempting to keep a straight stream open in the room, to keep it as tenable as possible. And at that point I started losing dexterity. I lost all the skin on my hands, and I started having trouble keeping the hose line open in my hands. So what I did is I pinned it in between my arms, and at that point, I'll just be honest, I thought my life was over. I thought I was gonna die, and it flashed through my head that this was gonna be it. So it wasn't until that point where I thought death was coming quickly that I decided to call for a mayday on the radio. I reached up, holding the hose line here, keeping it open. The stream was kind of flopping around and I was dropping it, trying to keep it up. I called for a mayday. Apparently I didn't press the button hard enough because I lost all the skin on my fingers. I kind of didn't know where I was on the radio. That mayday never went over the entire scene, and I just was burning while I was trying to keep a hose line open and waiting for my partner to get out.
We ended up coming right back to where we initially had first thought we might put the ladder. It's not really the safest place because of the fact that window's right there and because of the gable end, but we really didn't have any choice at that point. So we laid the ladder against the roof line, got ready to go up, and I got 1 foot on the ladder and we went defensive.
I wasn't in there very long, maybe 30 seconds at the most, when I heard emergency traffic and I felt Coors grabbing me by the coat and telling me to get out.
So I dropped the TIC camera. At that time, Battalion 151 cleared emergency traffic, and they said that we were changing from offensive to defensive.
47th Avenue, command alarm with emergency traffic. All units, vacate the building. We're going defensive. Give PARs upon exiting. All units, vacate the building. Give PARs upon exiting. We're going defensive.
I don't know, I didn't know at the time what prompted them to make that decision, except that I was okay with it at this point because it was too hot in here, and now I just was hoping really that Derek and Luke would hear that change of traffic and come back to me, that would prompt them to come around, hoping that would lead to that. I still felt at that point if we could have gotten out to the door and waited for ventilation from the roof that we could have made an offensive attack on this, but at this point they're command, and I completely support their decision, especially given the high heat that we encountered.
First things that I do when I'm taking over any command for a fire, I'm looking at two big things right off the bat. I'm looking at what is our, how's our risk management profile? We need to apply a standard risk management profile, and I'm looking at all of our critical fireground factors. It was really obvious to me that we were dealing with much more than a contents fire. This was a deep-seated structure fire. Ironically, there was little to no visible flame from where we were looking at the fire, but the smoke conditions were very apparent to me. I like to say I call it angry smoke. It was angry, pissed off, brown, puffing, pressurized smoke coming out. And I knew that at that point that if there was anybody that was still in that house, that their likelihood of surviving that fire was slim to none. So with that said, you know, I looked at our standard risk management profile. I knew at that point that in applying our risk management profile, the only savable lives that were in that house were the firefighters themselves. If there was anybody in that house at that point, they were dead at that point. So combining all that stuff and applying it to a standard incident action plan, I leaned over, I confirmed with Chief Gustafson, again, who was driving me that day. I said, I don't like this. Everything at this point appears to be, at least in my mind, that we need to get out and we need to go defensive on this.
Emergency traffic hit, and they told us to get out. So I started yelling, D block emergency traffic, D block emergency traffic, and still no answer. I turned around and bumped heads with Albert Abril here. We had a conversation here.
I said, Luke, where's Derek? He said, he's in there flowing water. He said, it's really, really hot in here. And I said, I know and he said, actually, they just changed from offensive to defensive. I said, I know. I said, we got to get out of here now. It's way too hot. I have fought plenty of fire with these guys roving in here, and when I worked on Engine 24 just south of them. And I know that this is a competent, capable crew who has experienced plenty of these types of fires. So to hear that in Luke's voice just confirmed to me what I was thinking in my head, that we need to be out of here. So I told Luke, I said, hey, go get Derek. Let's get back to this door. We're getting out of here.
Now I started making my way out here. At that point, Derek shut the line down, and I figured he had heard the emergency traffic at that point, and I was in his way to crawl back out on the hose line. So we turned around, started crawling back out this way.
We redeployed our line down this way into the backyard where the back patio was totally involved. A couple trees were involved, and we started hitting at that point from the back.
And so I decided that I wanted to step out to the center of the room and try and pan with my TIC camera and see if I could see Derek. And my thought was, if I see him in there anywhere, we're just going to grab him real quick and we're going to leave. And so I kind of backed off of Luke a little bit, and I remember pushing away from the wall and yelling for Derek. And as I lifted up my TIC camera to get ready to pan, I heard something just slightly over here. And I don't know what it was, but something that caused me to drop the TIC and reach out to this general area. So I kind of stepped out like this, and I was on my knees, and I grabbed my camera, and I was going to pan, and something over here triggered me, and I just kind of moved my arm like this. And that was when I actually felt Derek's, part of his SCBA.
I started to become a little bit disoriented. I started falling over. I could no longer hold the hose line in my hand. And I realized at that point it was seconds away from me being unconscious. And so I decided to drop the hose line. I knew that the hose line was coming in the front door, and I knew that I was right around the door. So I grabbed the hose line that was coming into the door instead of crawling back around this loop that was made. And I crawled out as fast as I could out the door.
As I looked around this corner, Derek was just kind of laying here in this landing area right here. And I could tell that he was extremely hot. His turnouts didn't look burned through, but they were definitely smoking and charred, and he was kind of just lying there. I came out to here, and Luke was behind me, and I could still feel that heat pushing on us, just this extreme heat kind of funneling at us. And I knew I didn't want to stay here anymore. It was just too much in this doorway. And so I remember leaning over and grabbing Derek and saying, Derek, we got to go, brother, we got to go. And he just looked at me and said, I'm burned, I can't move. I said, I know. I said, but we got to get out of this area. We can't stay right here. And at that point, Luke kind of showed up next to me and stepped over the wall, and I grabbed Derek by his straps and helped him up, and then kind of lifted him over the wall to Luke, and then we helped him walk over here to this grass area.
Can you go ahead with that traffic again? I didn't hear you.
I need ALS and a rescue to the 411 for an injured firefighter.
command to engine 151 on deck. Engine 151 on deck, go. Chris, I need you to report to engine 15. They got a firefighter down. You're going to be treatment sector. I'll get you a rescue right now. Copy, assuming treatment. I'm going to leave my engineer to pump that line for you.
And I went out and started attending to Derek, carried him out to the front yard, and still not knowing he's burned, I take his mask off of him, and I said, what's going on? And he said, I'm burned bad, man. And so I was thinking in my head, okay, yeah, we're all burnt up in here. I wasn't thinking it was that bad. And he said, you're gonna have to pull this glove off me. Pull the glove off, and his whole hand sloughed off in that glove. I started opening up his jacket, and I could see that his stomach, his arms, everything else, they took his pants off him. Saw burns all the way down his legs, and then I knew how severe this one was. We loaded him in the ambo and transported him to County Hospital.
I feel very strongly that because Luke and Derek, because they were in top physical shape, because they were two young firefighters who understand the importance of physical training and physical fitness from a total wellness standpoint, that definitely helped them survive this incident. But then also too, especially on the recovery side, especially for Derek, because he was in such great physical shape, that helped him survive the 30+ days in the burn unit. Physical fitness is a must for you to be able to survive these type of conditions. We are looking at a time frame of approximately 3 minutes from reporting on scene to exiting the structure because of command declaring strategy and because Derek Block finally found the way out. We cannot get stuck in that process of that I have been on this fire before. What's critical about this is that the importance of every crew member to look at a scene and size it up for themselves too, and to communicate that back and forth, crew member to crew member, but most of all from a crew member to a captain. Is what I'm saying, is that matching up with what I am doing from a task level standpoint? And ask yourself, what are we risking, what are we gaining? Why are we even in here? Why are we in here? What are we trying to attain? What are we trying to achieve? And if we are getting beat down to the floor by smoke and heat, and we're encapsulated in our protective clothing with an SCBA, and we're trying to effect a rescue, we have to ask ourselves, should we be in here? If you should, then you should deploy your resources properly, and you should stay in close contact and communications with each other as best as you can. The fire ground is very dynamic. It does change all the time, but the importance of crew integrity and the ability for communications to stay intact is key. The one good thing about our incident action plan and our strategic decision-making process is that it is fluid. It is always changing. Just because you make a decision on a fire truck in the front right seat or you're going into the front door does not mean that it cannot change in the matter of 30 seconds. You have to respond to the conditions, you have to come up with the decisive actions, and you have to communicate that to your crew, and you have to communicate that to sector officers and command who is outside.
Up until I crossed that threshold, everything that I saw matched up with what I did, and what I saw matched up with what I encountered. And then once I crossed that threshold, everything changed. And that should send up a red flag in every company officer and every firefighter's mind when what you expect to encounter isn't what you actually encounter, and when it doesn't add up to what you've seen and what you've planned for. It's time to slow down and reassess and consider redeploying or changing strategies, or even just regrouping, resetting the whole system and seeing if you can get your guys back to you to get everybody's input and decide, should we still be here or should we exit?
If the conditions are indicating that we have high heat, that we have low visibility, that we have pressurized smoke, that we have changing conditions, whether it be from a wind-driven fire, whether it be from the lack of ventilation or delayed ventilation, we need to change the conditions. We can do that by redeploying our resources. We can do that by backing out and changing the conditions from the threshold of the door. We need to do that. We should do that in order for us to have a more positive outcome and for us to have a safer place to operate. If we are getting pushed down to the floor by heat and fire, what are the chances of us being in the green, of us actually risking a lot to save anybody who's in this house fire?
If you're in an extremely high heat, low visibility situation, you're having a hard time getting to the seat of the fire, and you're pinned down to the ground, it's not enough just to be on the hose line. it's important that you stay with your partner on the hose line. In a circumstance that we encountered, like this fire, it's important that when I started advancing, like I told you guys, when I just wanted to move forward a few feet just to see if I can see the seat of the fire to make an effect on the fire, that I turn around and I tell Luke what's going on in my head. Subsequently, if his plan was to go back to the front door and get me more hose, it's important that firefighters have that communication saying, I'm gonna go get you some more hose and I'll be right back, stay put.
We both had radios on. Monday morning quarterback this one, I would have got on my radio and said, hey, firefighter or portable 1 to portable 2 or firefighter Moran to D block, are you okay, or where are you at? Are you burning up? You know, or I'm hot, anything to communicate. Our voices weren't getting it done, so use your radios.
The one thing that I would say that I would change now is that I would have allowed the thought of a mayday to enter my head much sooner than it did.
With the fact that my skin was already burning and I had lost communication with my partner, I wanted to drive home the necessity of calling for help early. I didn't end up attempting to call a mayday until I couldn't even press the button on the radio. My hands were so badly burned. It was the time that it entered my mind, like that I was probably going to die on this fire. I thought if I don't get help in the next 10 or 15 seconds, I could become unconscious and die, and that's when the mayday entered my mind.
It probably should have happened about the first time that Luke and I called his name and couldn't hear from him. It probably should have thought about that. The moment I became concerned about not knowing where Derek was, especially when I threw in the factors of the high heat that we encountered, it should have happened sooner. I know we have a 30-second rule, but realistically, you know about 10 seconds into whatever situation you're in, whether or not you're in trouble. You know, don't let those 20 seconds pass by just because it's a rule. The moment you know you're in trouble, get on that radio and call out your mayday.
Anytime you have that communications breakdown, it is necessary, it is incumbent, it is important enough for you to be able to respond to that, for you to declare a mayday. In essence, that's what was happening on. We had a firefighter because we lost communications with him, because we did not have that crew integrity, and the crew of Engine 15 will tell you that, and they will reemphasize that, is that we had a lost firefighter. Derek may have not thought that he was lost, but a company officer, Captain Abril, knew that he could not find his crew member. Luke Moran knew he could not find his partner. He could not hear him, he could not see him. We, in essence, had a lost firefighter. It is absolutely a must, it is absolutely okay, it is absolutely expected that we expect not only a captain to be able to initiate a mayday, but for the firefighter who feels as though he can't find his crew, for him to initiate that mayday. Not 3 minutes into an incident, not 2 minutes into an incident, but if it takes 30 seconds and you don't know where your crew member's at and you cannot see or feel or touch your crew member, initiate the mayday. We are going to be looking at, from a training perspective in the next coming year, fire dynamics. How we operate when conditions change dramatically on us too. What does ventilation do for us? What are we operating appropriately when it comes to hose line management? Are we deploying the proper hose lines and to overcome the BTUs that are facing us while going inside the front door? We do a dangerous job. We have a dangerous occupation. To date, we have lost 11 firefighters. I am very thankful, this organization is very thankful that we did not lose number 12 and number 13. We need to learn from that. We need to understand that our Volume 2 SOPs, we need to understand that our professional standards guides, we need to understand that our training that we do all emphasizes one thing, and that is to survive, to be able to survive in the types of environments that we expect you guys to work and to be able to work in and survive in. That is what our job is about. From a company officer standpoint, we talk about expectations and roles. Each one of you as company officers, each one of, whether you're acting, whether you're newly made like Captain Abril, Albert was on this call, whether you're a 20-year veteran captain, each one of you at one point in your career came to this organization and you laid out a set of expectations and a set of responsibilities that you said that you were obligated and that you wanted to follow, that you wanted to attain. I need you guys to understand that we respect the position of the captain, but there comes a lot of responsibility and obligations to it. And like I said, at one point in your career, each one of you came to us and you said that you wanted that commitment, you wanted that responsibility. We ask that you guys remember that and you guys always strive to attain that on an everyday basis.
In conclusion, what I wanted to say was just a heartfelt thank you to the fire department, to the people that came to my side at the hospital. I'm gonna cry. The way this fire department took care of me was unlike anything that I could have ever imagined. There were people at the hospital, there were people taking care of my family, people taking care of my house. I don't think I was ever at the hospital without somebody there from the Phoenix Fire Department or other agencies. And that just says something about the brotherhood that we're a part of. It says something about the camaraderie that we get to experience on this job. My family and I are both extremely grateful for the way that we were just sacrificially cared for. We were just loved beyond measure. We were provided for financially. We were provided for with food, with gift cards. The local 493 was absolutely terrific. I couldn't thank them enough. And I just want to say that I'm extremely grateful to be a part of this organization.
First of all, I want to thank you guys. I want to thank you for your service, for your professionalism. I want to thank you for your commitment to making sure that Derek received the best care that day, and for bringing that incident under control, because this was a very dynamic, this was a very non-traditional call that we do go on. There were some factors that occurred there on that day too. So your professionalism is very much appreciated from every member of the fire department throughout our organization.